5 years into our marriage, my husband's true love posted a picture of a property deed on her Instagram story. The caption read, "So grateful to Ricardo for transferring this house to me." I stared at the address. It was my address. Confused, I commented with just a question mark. Ricardo's accusatory call came immediately. "She's a single mom, Gabriella. Have some compassion. I just transferred the deed so her son can go to a better school. It doesn't affect us living here." His voice dripped with disdain. "Seriously, you have a heart of stone." Then I heard Mariana's fake, breathy sobs in the background. 30 minutes later, another Instagram story, this time tagging me. "A brand new Mercedes, worth at least 100 grand. Just bought this baby outright." You know what they say, a man's money goes where his heart is. I knew it was a sorry gift from Ricardo. This time, I had made up my mind. I was going to file for divorce. Ricardo came home that evening to find me staring at a birthday cake while swallowing a mifepristone pill. It was the first of the pills for a medication abortion. It was my birthday. I had bought the cake, hoping he would celebrate with me, planning to tell him I was pregnant. I had waited until 7 p.m., with unanswered calls and texts piling up. Only my comment on Mariana's post had gotten an immediate response, a furious tirade. I tried to explain, but he hung up and blocked me. The stress caused cramping and spotting. Ricardo glanced at the pills and the cake. "Whose birthday is it?" "Yours," he asked, frowning. Silently, I put the pills away and tossed the cake in the trash. "A friend's," I said flatly.
He seemed relieved.
"Your birthday's not until September 28th. It's only the 8th. 5 years of marriage, and he still got my birthday wrong." Ironically, he never forgot hers. He sat down beside me and handed me a small teddy bear. "Mariana asked me to give this to you. She was really upset by your passive-aggressive comment. Just apologize to her, Gabriella." The bear had a Mercedes logo, probably a freebie with a car, and a greasy stain.
"I don't want it," I said.
His brow furrowed. "What's your problem? She's being the bigger person, apologizing, and you can't even say sorry?" He tried to pull me up, presumably to force me to call Mariana. His grip was firm, and my injured right leg slammed into the coffee table. He had scolded me a week earlier while carrying a bowl of hot oatmeal and texting Mariana at the same time. He hadn't been looking, and the entire bowl landed on my foot, taking a layer of skin with it. He saw the fresh blood seeping through the bandage. "I'll take you to the hospital." "Okay," I agreed. In the car, Mariana's chirpy voice filled the speakers through the Bluetooth. "Welcome back, my CEO. Work hard. Make that money for me." Ricardo's face tightened. "Mariana left this in my car last time. I'll toss it later." "Don't bother," I said quietly. Silence returned. He looked at me surprised. "You're not angry?" I just pressed my lips together. I used to care about Mariana. Now, I didn't even care about him, let alone his mistress. "Just drive. It's late." The hospital was a mile away, just after a U-turn.
His phone rang.
He answered, a smile spreading across his face. It was Mariana, her voice sugary sweet, asking him to teach her how to drive the Mercedes one-handed. "Mariana has something urgent. I'll drop you off here." The hospital's right across the street. Just 50 yards. He couldn't even be bothered to make the U-turn. He was that eager to see her. I stared at him coldly. "I can't walk." His expression turned icy. "Don't be dramatic, Gabriella. You have a leg injury, not a disability." He yanked me out of the car, telling me to call him when I was done at the hospital. He sped off, splashing dirty rainwater all over my injured foot. A light drizzle started. I stood there, soaked and shivering, tears streaming down my face. 50 yards felt like 50 miles. A sharp pain ripped through my abdomen, and I collapsed on the crosswalk. Cars whizzed by. If a hospital security guard hadn't helped me, I might have been hit. Hours later, I finally made it home, exhausted and aching, only to find Ricardo storming in. "I told you to call me when you were done." I waited at the hospital for an hour. "Your phone was off." I looked at Ricardo blankly. I had been at the hospital for 2 hours, receiving 4 bags. There was no sign that he had shown up. I had to take a cab home, and my phone had died just 2 minutes before. He hadn't been there at all. He used to be so attentive. "When did everything change?" "You blocked me," I said. "I couldn't call." He hesitated, his anger fading slightly. "I brought you some oatmeal. Thought you'd be hungry." I looked at the watery gruel. A few sad sprigs of green onion floated on top. No egg, no meat. It looked like leftovers. 30 minutes earlier, Mariana had posted a photo of Ricardo cooking. The caption read, who says chivalry is dead? Not only did he teach me to drive my new Mercedes one-handed, but he's also making homemade oatmeal for me.
So sweet.
My stomach churned. Throw it away. I don't want it. His face darkened. What's your problem? I went out of my way for you. I just transferred the house to Mariana, and you're being difficult. I'm still letting you live there. She was just grateful that her son has a stable home, and you went and made a snarky comment. I haven't even brought that up yet. I was physically and emotionally exhausted. You misunderstood. I was just confused because the address on the deed was our address. He cut me off. Misunderstood? Mariana's right about you. You're always so angry, so bitter. Anytime I talk to another woman, you get jealous and paranoid. There's something wrong with you. Before, I would have argued, tried to make him understand. Now, I just stared at him. When he finally finished his rant, I asked calmly, "Are you done? Can you turn off the lights?" He glared at me and slammed the door on his way out, leaving the lights on. Moments later, another slam echoed.
The front door this time.
Usually, when he stormed off to Mariana's after a fight, I'd lie awake all night. Tonight, I slept soundly. The next day, I contacted a lawyer to start the divorce process. Ricardo disappeared for 3 days. I saw him for the first time in a vacation photo posted by his friend Carlos. A group shot of them with friends. Ricardo and Mariana stood side by side, wearing matching outfits, Mariana beaming. I liked the post. Ricardo called immediately. "I'll pick you up later. We're going to the beach with some friends," he added. "I didn't even have to invite you, you know. Consider it a reward for your good behavior lately."
Okay, I said.
The divorce was already in motion. I didn't want to alert him. He picked me up, surprisingly, without Mariana. At the beach, Carlos greeted me. "Sorry about the other night, Gabriella. I organized that get-together and should have given you a heads up. I'll take a penalty shot for that later." He was publicly smoothing things over, trying to make me look good. "It's fine," I said vaguely. "Work's been crazy lately. I heard you convinced the top execs to open a branch in Springfield."
Congrats. More polite small talk.
"We're considering," I said non-committally. Ricardo marched over, scowling. "Springfield? Why didn't you tell me?" I didn't approve that. I turned and looked at his furious face. The air thickened with tension. Ricardo continued his interrogation. Carlos awkwardly tried to defuse the situation, suggesting they start the barbecue once the grill was ready. Ricardo sat next to me, looking unusually anxious. I promised Mariana I'd transfer the house back after her son finishes elementary school.
And, it's my house.
I don't even have to explain myself to you. Okay, I replied calmly. Then a familiar figure appeared in the distance. My smile faltered. A young guy I'd never met, clearly a friend of Ricardo and Carlos, jumped up and waved excitedly. "Hey, Mariana. Ricardo's over here." A collective gasp rippled through the group. Carlos kicked the guy's foot and muttered something about him being clueless. "I need the restroom," I said, standing up. I didn't want a scene. I wanted to maintain some dignity. Ricardo glanced at me, then at Mariana, and didn't follow. When I returned, everyone was sitting on the beach, full from the barbecue. Mariana and Ricardo were nestled close together. I found a quiet spot away from them. "All right, everyone's here," Carlos announced. "Let's play truth or dare." Ricardo won the first round. Mariana lost. She chose truth. Ricardo went easy on her, asking about something happy that had happened recently. Mariana batted her eyelashes at Ricardo. I met an amazing guy, and within a day I had a house and a car. He even taught me to drive one-handed. She finished with a triumphant smirk in my direction. Most people there knew how she got in the house and car, but they always pretended not to notice. Mariana flaunting it was another story. The air grew thick with awkwardness. Even Carlos looked uncomfortable. Seeing that I wasn't reacting, he tried to keep the game going. Okay, round 2. Looks like it's Gabriella's turn this time. Mariana got to choose my dare.
Truth, I said flatly.
Mariana sauntered over with the beer. Let's make this interesting, Gabriella. How about a dare? Alarm bells rang. I choose truth. It's easy. Ricardo says you're a great swimmer. Swim a lap for us. She looked pointedly at my stomach. I'm not feeling well. I can't swim, I said firmly. Mariana pouted at Ricardo, who immediately bristled. You're a nationally ranked swimmer. You can't not swim. She apologized to you the other day, and now she's trying to be nice, and you can't even do this for her? He grabbed my arm, ignoring my protests, and with Mariana's help, dragged me toward the water. Mariana took a swig of beer. Here's to you, Gabriella. Show us what you've got. She chugged the entire bottle, putting me on the spot. I told you I don't want to swim, I snapped, irritated. And I didn't ask her to drink. And why can't I choose truth? Mariana started crying. Ricardo's face hardened. He slammed his beer bottle onto the sand. What's your problem? She's not even making it hard for you. She chugged a whole beer. Stop being so difficult. I looked at Ricardo, playing the hero, then at Mariana, fake sobbing. I laughed, a cold, hollow sound. Did I ask her to drink? I said I didn't want to swim, and she forced me. How is that not making it hard for me? Mariana's sobs intensified. Ricardo's face turned thunderous. He rolled up his pants legs.
Fine.
I'll swim with you, in front of everyone. He grabbed my hair and shoved me into the water. The cold shocked my skin. Water rushed up my nose, and I choked, coughing violently. He didn't let go. My eyes burned, tears and snot streaming down my face. Just as my lungs felt like they would burst, he finally let go. A wave crashed over me. I reached for his pants leg, but he kicked me away. The undertow pulled me under. Icy water engulfed me. It felt like an eternity before I finally surfaced, gasping for air. Ricardo was consoling Mariana, his arm around her. Don't cry. I took care of it. He walked over to me, looking down with contempt. Apologize to Mariana and chug a beer or everyone stared. Ricardo's eyes bored into me. My eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of rage. Ricardo, I interrupted, my voice shaking. Expect papers from my lawyer. We're getting a divorce. Shock filled his eyes. I stumbled away, my legs weak. As I reached the street, everything went black. The last thing I heard were panicked voices. Someone call an ambulance. She's bleeding. There's so much blood. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. The bright, sterile light momentarily blinded me, and the pain in my body made me wish for unconsciousness again. My abdomen throbbed, my head pounded, and my injured foot felt like it was on fire. A nurse appeared, adjusting the machines beside me. You collapsed on the street, ma'am. An ambulance brought you in, she said calmly, though her eyes carried something else. Pity, perhaps. I didn't need pity. Not after everything I'd endured. Ricardo wasn't there. Of course, he wasn't. A part of me knew he would never bother to show up. I asked the nurse if anyone had come looking for me, but she shook her head. Not yet. Do you want me to call someone? I shook my head, refusing. There was no one. For years, I had isolated myself, cut ties, and silently endured humiliation and betrayal to maintain a marriage that was clearly a farce. Ricardo had taken advantage of that. Mariana was just another pawn in his game of manipulation. But now I was done. The doctor arrived shortly after, explaining that stress and the fall had worsened my leg injury and caused internal complications. I would need complete rest. Rest. As if my life allowed for that. But something inside me had already shifted. As he spoke, I realized I didn't have to accept this anymore. Ricardo had treated me like an outsider in my own life, and Mariana? She had shamelessly enjoyed what was mine, as if it were her right. I felt anger, a deep, burning rage, but alongside it came a strange clarity. I spent 3 days in the hospital, every minute feeding the plan growing in my mind. It was no longer about surviving. It was about taking back control. The first step was simple. I called a lawyer. I explained everything from the house transfer to the episodes of abuse and humiliation. He stayed silent for a moment before saying, "This won't be easy, but we have a strong case." I didn't want it to be easy. I wanted it to be fair. He began preparing the paperwork, and I knew I was in for a long fight. When I was finally discharged, I returned home alone. Ricardo wasn't there, as expected. The house was silent, but there were traces of him, his shirt draped over the couch, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the coffee table. He probably thought I'd be grateful he still allowed me to live there. I picked up the glass and poured the liquid down the drain. I didn't want any trace of him in my life anymore. The next day, as I organized the house, my phone rang. It was Ricardo. I took a deep breath before answering. "You're out of the hospital?" he asked, with no hint of concern in his voice. "Yes," I replied curtly. He continued, "Good. Listen, Mariana and I are planning a little trip this weekend. I'll swing by to grab some things. Don't worry about it." He spoke as if nothing had happened, as if I were his housekeeper. Before I could respond, he hung up. My hands trembled with anger.
but it was perfect.
Letting him think he was in control was part of the plan. When he arrived to grab some things, I was ready. He walked in casually, glancing around as if inspecting the place. "You should fix that couch," he said, pointing to a cushion out of place. I ignored the comment and watched as he collected clothes and belongings, acting as if he still owned everything. As he was leaving, I said calmly, "Ricardo, you'll be receiving divorce papers soon." He froze for a moment, then turned to me, laughing. "Divorce? Gabriella, you won't get anything. The house is mine. Everything is mine. You should be thankful I haven't thrown you out." He walked out laughing, and I stood there, my heart pounding. It wasn't fear. It was determination. In the following days, I started taking action. I spoke to neighbors, old friends, even staff at the school where Mariana's son studied. I gathered stories, comments, anything that could expose Ricardo and Mariana's true nature. They weren't untouchable, as they thought. I discovered, for example, that Mariana was recklessly overspending, buying expensive things and flaunting them online. That would be useful later. Meanwhile, Ricardo began noticing something was off. One random day, he tried to enter the house and found that I had changed the locks. I received furious messages, veiled threats about how he would handle this in court. I could barely contain my laughter. He still thought he had power over me. The divorce hearing was scheduled a few weeks later, and I showed up prepared, with my lawyer and a mountain of evidence against him. Ricardo arrived confident, with Mariana by his side, both as arrogant as ever. But as the facts unfolded, the abuse, the betrayal, the property transfers, I watched his smug smile vanish. Mariana tried to intervene, claiming I was exaggerating, but it only made things worse. The judge was clear. I was entitled to the house, significant compensation, and most importantly, my freedom. Ricardo lost control as the decision was announced. "You'll never survive without me, Gabriella," he shouted as he was practically dragged out of the courtroom. Mariana followed him, clearly embarrassed. I just smiled. It wasn't about surviving without him. It was about finally living for myself. Today, the house is peaceful. No Ricardo, no Mariana, no weight of years of humiliation. I've started redecorating, turning each room into something that truly reflects who I am. I don't miss Ricardo. I don't miss anything he represented. All that's left is freedom and the certainty that I will never let anyone treat me the way he did again. And that, more than any revenge, is the greatest victory. When it was all finally over, I sat on the couch in the living room, my living room in my house. For the first time in years, the silence around me wasn't heavy but peaceful. There were no shouts, manipulations, or the constant sense of walking on eggshells. It was just me and the certainty that, after everything, I had won. Ricardo and Mariana vanished from my life for a while after the court hearing. I didn't see or hear anything about them, which, deep down, was a relief. But life has a funny way of exposing those who deserve to fall. It didn't take long before I started hearing rumors about the chaos taking over their lives. Mariana, with her reckless spending, had piled up debts that even Ricardo couldn't handle. She sold the Mercedes she had flaunted so much online and began complaining publicly that men aren't what they used to be. It was almost comical to see her, someone who bragged about her luxurious life, now begging for attention on social media. Ricardo, on the other hand, was drowning in legal troubles. His business, which he had always used as a symbol of power, went bankrupt due to poor management and lawsuits from other shady ventures he had been running. He tried moving back in with his parents, but to my satisfaction, they rejected him. I learned he was living as a guest at a friend's place, someone who would likely grow tired of him soon enough. Ricardo had always had a talent for destroying everything around him, and now he was reaping what he sowed. My life, on the other hand, took a path I never thought possible. Once I finished redecorating the house, I felt it was time for a true fresh start. With the settlement I received from the divorce and some savings I had stashed away, I decided to invest in something I'd always dreamed of, starting my own business. I converted the garage into a small artisan bakery. The space, which Ricardo once used to park his car as a trophy, was now filled with the sweet smell of baked goods and smiling customers. The bakery's success grew faster than I anticipated. Within a few months, I had to rent a larger space to keep up with demand. Today, I have 2 employees who help me run the business, and I'm already planning to open a second location. It's not just about the money. It's about finally having something that's entirely mine, something no one can take away. Still, the anger and resentment from everything I endured show up from time to time. I won't pretend I've completely moved on. There are days when I remember the insults, the humiliation, the times I doubted myself because of Ricardo. But the difference now is that those feelings no longer control me. They're just echoes of a life left behind, a life I will never allow to repeat. The last time I saw Ricardo was by chance while walking downtown. He was on a street corner, arguing with someone who seemed to be the owner of a restaurant. He looked thin, his face gaunt, wearing clothes that barely fit. I stood there for a moment, not out of pity, but to take in the scene as a reminder that people like him always end up this way. He noticed me from afar, but didn't say anything. His expression was a mix of shame and resentment. I gave him a small smile and walked away. Today, I'm doing well, better than I ever imagined. I'm not the same woman Ricardo thought he could manipulate and humiliate. I'm stronger, more independent, and, above all, happier. My house, my bakery, my life. Everything now reflects who I truly am. And that is my greatest victory. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that revenge doesn't need to be cruel or violent. The best revenge is thriving in the face of chaos, proving that despite everything, you've rebuilt yourself and prospered. And I did exactly that. Ricardo and Mariana's story is just a chapter in the past now. My focus is on the future, a future that, for the first time, I can truly say is mine alone.